Hello. So, my name's Tymon, but I hope that by the end of the speech there'll be something more interesting than that. Remember, what I want to tell you about is the story of Ted Kaczynski. And Ted Kaczynski was a genius man who lived in the 1980s in the USA in a little cabin in the middle of the woods. And he had a habit of sending out letters to people he saw as important in upholding the social order. You may think, okay, well, what's so special about that? A lot of people send out letters. The answer to that question lies in the content of the letters, as the letters contained bombs that detonated upon opening the letter. Through that, Ted Kaczynski detonated 16 bombs in total, which killed 3 people and injured 23 more. But, still, there's quite a few terrorists in the world that pop up pretty regularly. So why would we remember this one? The answer to that is in Ted's intelligence. And Ted was intelligent academically, but also, practically, because he managed to outmaneuver the FBI, which, as you know, is pretty competent, for 17 years. The only reason he finally got caught is because he blackmailed the Washington Post into publishing his manifesto that then his brother read in the newspaper and identified the views as Ted's and then snitched on him. Now, let's get to my story with the manifesto itself. I knew about Ted Kaczynski and I knew a rough outline of his views for quite a long time, but I didn't really have any motivation to read those texts. But then last December came and the Luigi Mangione case happened. I don't know if you remember it. It was the attractive Italian man that was captured in the US for killing a insurance firm CEO. And there were significant cases recorded of Luigi supporting Kaczynski's views. So that kind of encouraged me because, well, Kaczynski was old, lived a long time ago. He was also a recluse and he was grumpy and he didn't like people. And so that's not really something I would align myself with. But, Luigi Mangione was popular and young. And so I kind of would like to align myself more with those labels. And so that motivated me to finally read the thing. And I, to be honest, got hooked on it. I read the whole thing in 3 days. That is because I expected the thing to just be philosophical babbling that, to be fair, I do like in and of itself, as I really do like philosophy in general, but the texts I read for philosophy are usually ran through, and each word has been analyzed 50 times and interpreted in 50 different ways, and centuries of intellectual history have been built upon this. But Ted's ideas were nothing like that. They were fun and exciting and fresh, and they actually described the world I live in and not some random dude hundreds of years ago. And so that made me interested in Ted. And so I started reading about Ted Kaczynski, not the Unabomber, the man behind the bomb. I found out that he was actually nothing short of a genius. He had 167 IQ. He went to Harvard at 16 and became later the youngest assistant professor in University of Michigan's history. For all of those achievements, he received a lot of praise from his peers. But praise and respect was the only thing he received. And he wasn't really liked or loved or anything like that, because his intelligence isolated him from people. He always was alone because his family, when he was a child, was constantly moving, and so he didn't really ever have any friends. And that, coupled with his later actions, made people call him evil and antisocial. Then those labels were also assigned to his views. And as easy and comforting as it is to call those views evil because of his actions, it's isolating. And it isolates people who actually resonate with the views itself and not with the actions of bombing people. It's, I think, very harmful because, well, it causes people to radicalize. But now, let me put my time, very limited time, where my mouth is, and let's get to Ted's actual ideas. And so, Ted's, the main problem he saw in the modern world is that people are unfulfilled because we lead unnatural lives. that in which we traded our freedom to decide what we want to do with ourselves for regular meals and harmonograms or medicine. But you can say, what? We still can decide what we want to do, just with the added benefit of not worrying that every single minor cut we get or a mosquito bite kills us in the next 15 seconds. I wouldn't really agree with that, because in order to get the medicine, the shelter, the food that modern society can grant us, you need to abide by the law, you need to get a job, and you need to abide by social norms and religious dogmas. These things disrupt what Ted Kaczynski called the power process, which may sound weird, but is actually pretty simple. And it contained of 3 parts. And it was, firstly, finding a goal you want to achieve, then working towards it, and then completing it. So it's pretty simple. But there's an important catch, which is that the whole process, in order to make you feel fulfilled and happy, has to be autonomous. And this can be illustrated with an example of you throwing your trash out as something for your mother who comes home late from work. So let's consider 2 scenarios. So first, you are home before your mother, and then she comes, and you're doing already something else, and she makes you throw the trash out, and you're angry at her because you were doing already something else, and she's interrupting you, and she's angry at you because you don't want to do the things she did, and she's tired, and then you finally throw the trash out, but you're already both angry at yourself. Now let's consider a second scenario in which you, by yourself, think, hey, my mother's gonna be tired. Maybe I do something nice for her. And so you throw the trash out yourself. And then she comes back, and she's happy because you did something nice for her. And you're happy because you did something nice for her, and she's happy. So the action is exactly the same. And the only thing that changed is that you decided that you want to do it. That need for autonomy, coupled with the limits modern society imposes upon their freedom, makes people feel unfulfilled, at least according to Kaczynski. And so, his solution to the problem would be to return to a primitive, because primitive lifestyles provide us with very simple animalistic goals, right? We have to survive, reproduce, and then die. And bam, it's finished. It's over. But that lifestyle, of course, comes with its negatives, because you don't get the medicine, you don't get the regularity, you don't get the security. But, Ted argued, that is better, because sure, it is random, it is crude, but it is better to be randomly hurt than be hurt because some people who are at the top of the social ladder decided that, hey, we want a war, or hey, we don't want vaccines, anything like that. And there's more dignity in being hurt randomly, which is a point of possible divergence. And so we argue that we've graduated towards higher goals, right? Just think of Maslow's pyramid of needs. We have the base covered, right? We have food, we have shelter, and now we're ready to go on and do higher things, right? Achieve higher goals. And the process of doing that is what Ted Kaczynski would call surrogate activities. And those surrogate activities have one main issue, and that is that they don't really have an end to them. Because let's consider sports, for example. Probably many of you do sports, right? And so in sports, what is the end goal? What will give you final satisfaction? I'm not talking about temporary little happiness. If you run, your pace can get quicker. If you swim, your time can always get shorter. If you do bodybuilding, your muscles can always get bigger. So what's the end goal? Maybe maybe becoming world champion, but not really, because there's many world champions who still are not satisfied, and they still do their sports, and they still seek for something more. It doesn't provide any finality. And that goes for every single other activity that we can imagine. We are unsatisfied, and those activities just create an unquenchable thirst deep within us. Those ideas, however resonant, at least for me, as they may be, are unfortunately just one side of Ted's views and Ted's manifesto, as there's also a much more strictly negative side that cannot be defended. And he had some just straight up horrible views, such as he defended child abuse as a means of disciplining children, and that of course is something nobody should ever try to defend. But, and this is like the most important but of the whole story, and so if you're to listen anywhere, please listen now. Controversial and important texts have vital flaws. But those vital flaws don't discredit the genuine value that can be derived from those texts. Like, just look at ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, people thought that depression in women is caused by the corruption of the traveling of a woman's womb across her body, but that we don't value the intellectual work that Plato or Aristotle or Socrates has done. No. And so, therefore, I kindly ask you to, for the future, whenever you stumble upon some concept or some general narrative that is spun around a work of intellect, please don't just throw it out because other people have. Think for yourself and give it a fair shot and analyze it fairly. Thank you.